Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Weight of Silence. Christopher Blake had built a career on reading people. 12 years in military intelligence, followed by 8 running his own security consulting firm, had taught him that silence often screamed louder than words. But nothing prepared him for the silence that filled room 347 of St. Michael's Medical Center. His son Bobby lay in the ICU bed, tubes running from his small arms, monitors beeping a rhythm that had become Christopher's heartbeat over the past 4 days. At 8 years old, Bobby should have been playing baseball, not fighting for his life against what doctors called acute systemic organ failure of unknown origin. Christopher squeezed his son's hand, feeling the weakness in his grip. Bobby's eyes fluttered open, those sharp blue eyes that looked so much like Christopher's own. But there was something else in them now, something Christopher recognized from his interrogation days. Fear and determination. "Dad," Bobby whispered, his voice barely audible above the machines. "Promise me something. Anything, buddy. You know that. Listen to my phone. After I'm gone." Bobby's grip tightened despite his weakness. There are recordings. Voice recordings. Christopher felt his throat constrict. "Bobby, you're going to be fine. The doctors are. Dad, please." Bobby's eyes locked onto his father's. "Check the recordings. But don't tell Mom." The words hit Christopher like a punch to the gut. Don't tell Mom. His wife Leah had been at Bobby's bedside every day, crying, praying, the picture of a devoted mother. Why would Bobby say that? "Where's your phone, buddy?" "Hidden. In my backpack." The zippered pocket inside. Bobby's breathing grew labored. 47 recordings. Start with number 1. "Promise me, Dad." "I promise." Bobby nodded, then his eyes closed again. The monitors continued their steady beep, but Christopher felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. He stayed another hour, watching his son sleep, before Leah arrived with coffee and red-rimmed eyes. "Any change?" she asked, kissing Bobby's forehead. He woke up for a few minutes. Seemed a bit stronger. Christopher studied her face, the face he'd loved for 12 years, the face that had smiled at him on their wedding day, the face that had glowed when she'd told him she was pregnant with Bobby. "Thank God," Leah whispered, touching Bobby's cheek. "I don't know what I'd do if we lost him, Christopher. I can't even think about it." Christopher nodded, but Bobby's words echoed in his mind. "Don't tell Mom." That night, after Leah insisted on taking the night shift at the hospital, Christopher drove home to their house in suburban Philadelphia. The 3-bedroom colonial felt empty without Bobby's laughter, without the sound of his video games, without his constant questions about everything. Christopher went to Bobby's room, untouched since they'd rushed him to the emergency room 4 days ago. The backpack was where Bobby always left it, hanging on the back of his desk chair. Christopher unzipped the main compartment, then found the hidden zippered pocket Bobby mentioned. Inside was an iPhone, not Bobby's regular phone, but an older model. Christopher's heart raced. This was deliberate. Bobby had hidden his phone for a reason. He sat on Bobby's bed and turned it on. No password. The voice recordings app showed 47 files, each dated over the past 3 weeks. Christopher's hands trembled as he pressed play on the first recording. Static, then footsteps. Bobby must have left the phone recording somewhere in the house. Then his wife's voice, clear as day. "We can't keep doing this much longer, Lance. He's getting suspicious." Lance. Lance Patterson. Christopher's former best friend from their Army days. Lance, who'd been at their house for dinner just 2 weeks ago. Lance, who'd been Bobby's godfather. A male voice responded. "Christopher doesn't suspect anything, Leah. He's too focused on work. That new contract in Chicago has him distracted. But what about Bobby?" Christopher's blood turned to ice. "The kid's been quiet since I talked to him," Lance said. "He won't say anything." "You shouldn't have been so rough with him," Leah snapped. "What if he tells Christopher what he saw?" "He won't. I made it very clear what would happen if he did." Silence. Then Leah again. "How much longer until the insurance policy fully kicks in?" 6 months. But we need to be patient. If something happens to Christopher now, it'll look suspicious. "I'm tired of waiting, Lance. I'm tired of pretending." The recording ended. Christopher sat frozen, the phone clutched in his hand. The room spun around him. 6 months. Insurance policy. Something happening to him. His wife was planning to kill him. And somehow, Bobby had known. Bobby had recorded evidence. Christopher's mind raced through the possibilities. He thought of Bobby's sudden illness, the mysterious symptoms that had baffled doctors, the nausea that started 3 weeks ago, the fatigue, the organ failure. 3 weeks. The same time these recordings started. Christopher looked at the remaining 46 recordings, his jaw clenched. Then he grabbed his laptop and opened an encrypted file he hadn't touched in years, his operational protocols from his intelligence days. If Leah and Lance wanted to play this game, they'd chosen the wrong target. Christopher Blake had spent 12 years learning how to dismantle enemy operations from the inside out. He'd learned patience, strategy, and how to turn opponents' strengths into weaknesses. He plugged in headphones and continued listening. By the time dawn broke, he'd heard all 47 recordings, and he understood everything. Chapter 2, The Network. Christopher hadn't slept. He'd spent the night listening, taking notes, and building a timeline. The recordings painted a picture that made him sick to his stomach and furious. It had started 18 months ago. Leah had reconnected with Lance at a military reunion Christopher had skipped due to work. What began as catching up had become an affair within weeks. But it wasn't just about sex. Lance had ambitions, and Leah wanted a different life. In recording number 12, they discussed it plainly. Christopher's business is worth $3 million. Easy, Lance had said. Plus the life insurance, $5 million, and the house. You be set, baby. We'd be set. But how? Leah had asked. It has to look natural. Leave that to me. I know people. Christopher pulled up Lance's service record on his secure network. Lance Patterson had been a combat medic before leaving the Army under murky circumstances. Christopher had helped him get discharged quietly, a favor for a friend who'd claimed PTSD. Now he wondered what really happened. He made 3 calls. The first was to Herman Waters, his older brother, and a detective with the Philadelphia PD. Chris, it's 5 in the morning. I need your help. Herman. Off the books. His brother's tone shifted. What's wrong? Bobby didn't get sick naturally. I think he was poisoned. Silence. Then, I'm coming over. The second call went to Trudy Gaines, a lawyer who specialized in family law and had done work for Christopher's company. Trudy, I need someone who can navigate a complex divorce while also dealing with potential criminal charges. Christopher, is this about Leah? Yes, but I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me today? Of course. The third call was to Eric Guerra, a toxicologist who'd left the FBI to start a private practice. Christopher had used his services for corporate investigations. Eric, I need a favor. Urgent. Can you run a comprehensive toxicology panel on a pediatric patient? Something the hospital might have missed. What are we looking for? Anything that could cause gradual organ failure. Something that mimics natural disease. That's a short list. And expensive. Money isn't an issue. My son's life is. When Herman arrived at 7, Christopher had organized everything. Printouts of transcribed recordings, timeline charts, financial documents he'd pulled from Leah's secret accounts she thought he didn't know about. Herman, a stocky man with graying hair and 25 years on the force, studied the materials with a detective's eye. Jesus, Chris, this is premeditated attempted murder. Maybe conspiracy to commit murder if they were planning to come after you too. I know, but I need to be smart about this. If I go to the police now, what happens? Herman rubbed his jaw. Honestly, we'd investigate. But recordings made by an 8-year-old without anyone's knowledge? That's legally gray. They might not be admissible. And Leah could claim coercion that you coached Bobby. Anything. Lance could walk. That's what I thought. But Chris, if Bobby was poisoned. That's where Eric comes in. I need proof. Real, scientific proof that shows what they did. Herman nodded. What do you need from me? Background on Lance. Where he's been. Who he's been talking to. The recordings mention people who can help. I need to know who they are. I can do that. But Chris, Herman met his brother's eyes. What are you planning? Christopher's expression hardened. I'm going to make sure Bobby gets justice. And I'm going to make sure those two never hurt anyone again. By noon, Christopher had assembled his team in his home office. Herman brought files on Lance. Trudy arrived with legal documents. Eric had rushed to the hospital to consult on Bobby's case, using credentials that gave him access to Bobby's medical records and the ability to order additional tests. Lance Patterson, Herman began, spreading photos across the desk. Discharged from the Army 4 years ago. Since then, he's bounced between jobs. Security guard, EMT, currently unemployed. But here's what's interesting. 6 months ago, he started depositing regular cash amounts. $2,000 here, $3,000 there. Nothing huge, but consistent. Where's it coming from? Christopher asked. That's what we need to find out. But I pulled some surveillance from a bank. Look who he met with 3 times in the past month. Herman slid across a grainy photo of Lance sitting in a coffee shop with a thin, sharp-featured man Christopher didn't recognize. Norman Chandler, Herman continued. Small-time criminal. Served 2 years for assault. Known for underground fighting rings and connections to people who do wet work. Hired muscle, Christopher said flatly. Exactly. If Lance wanted to hurt you, Chandler's the kind of guy who'd know how to make it look like an accident. Trudy leaned forward. Christopher, if we can prove Leah was planning your murder, that changes everything in a divorce proceeding. She'd get nothing. But more than that, both she and Lance would face serious prison time. I need more than recordings, Christopher said. I need them to act. I need them to make a move that can't be denied. You want to set a trap, Herman said. Yes, but first I need Bobby safe. Eric, what did you find? Eric Guerra, a lean man with intense eyes, opened his tablet. I pulled Bobby's complete medical history and ran additional tests the hospital hadn't considered. Christopher, your instincts were right. I found traces of thallium in his blood. The room went silent. Thallium poisoning, Eric continued, causes exactly the symptoms Bobby's experiencing. Organ damage, neurological issues, weakness. In small doses over time, it mimics natural disease. It's odorless, tasteless, and historically known as inheritance powder because it's been used to murder family members for money. Can you treat it? Christopher's voice was tight. Yes, there's a specific chelation therapy. If we start immediately, Bobby should make a full recovery. But Christopher, whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't amateur hour. Lance's medical training, Herman said. He'd know about thallium. How to get it, how to dose it. Christopher stood and walked to the window. His son had been slowly poisoned for weeks. By his own mother. Or at least, with her knowledge and consent. Here's what we're going to do, Christopher said, his voice cold and controlled. Eric, you start treatment for Bobby immediately. Tell the hospital you identified the cause as accidental environmental exposure, something that absolves everyone of blame for now. Herman, I need everything on Norman Chandler and anyone else Lance has been meeting with. Trudy, start preparing divorce documents, but don't file them yet. I want everything ready to go at a moment's notice. What are you going to do? Trudy asked. Christopher turned to face them, and Herman recognized the expression. It was the same look his brother had worn in Afghanistan when planning operations against high-value targets. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, Christopher said. An opportunity to finish the job. Chapter 3, The Performance. Bobby's recovery began within 48 hours of starting chelation therapy. The change was remarkable. Color returned to his cheeks, his strength improved, and the terrifying organ failure numbers started reversing. The hospital staff called it a miracle. Eric called it science. Christopher called it evidence. But to the outside world, especially to Leah and Lance, Bobby still appeared to be critically ill. Eric had carefully doctored the medical charts that Leah would see, showing continued deterioration. The real records, kept in a separate secure file, showed improvement. Christopher played his part perfectly. He looked haggard, defeated, like a man watching his son die. It wasn't hard. The rage and betrayal he felt inside translated well to the appearance of grief. Leah, for her part, was the devoted wife. She brought Christopher meals he didn't eat, held his hand when nurses gave updates, cried into his shoulder. If he hadn't known the truth, he would have believed her completely. She was that good. On day 7 of Bobby's hospital stay, day 3 of the real treatment, Christopher set his trap. He arranged a meeting at his office with his business partner, Ricardo Pope, making sure to schedule it when Leah knew he'd be away from the hospital. Ricardo, a sharp former CIA analyst, was one of the few people Christopher trusted completely. "We need to make this look real," Christopher told him. "I need you to sell the story." Ricardo nodded. "You know, Leah will ask me about it. I'm counting on it." That afternoon, Christopher met with Ricardo in his office. They spoke loudly enough for Christopher's assistant to overhear, and Christopher knew his assistant, though well-meaning, was a gossip who'd been friendly with Leah at company events. "Ricardo, I can't do this anymore," Christopher said, his voice carrying the weight of manufactured defeat. "Bobby's not getting better. The medical bills are destroying us. I need to liquidate assets." "Chris, man, you don't have to." "I do. I'm taking out the maximum amount on the business line of credit. $5 million. And I'm going to cash in my life insurance policy early. I need the money for experimental treatments." Ricardo played along perfectly. "That's a huge decision. The penalties alone. I don't care. My son is dying. Money doesn't matter if Bobby isn't here." They continued the conversation, discussing Christopher's plans to take Bobby out of the country for treatment, to Mexico, where a specialist supposedly had experimental therapies. Christopher made sure to mention he'd be traveling alone with Bobby, leaving in 3 days. Within an hour, his assistant had called Leah with concern about Christopher's mental state and his financial decisions. That night, Christopher listened to Lance's phone. He placed a tracker on it 2 days earlier, with Herman's help, and had been monitoring every call. Lance called Leah immediately. "He's cashing everything out. $5 million liquid, plus whatever he can pull from the business." "The insurance policy?" Leah's voice was eager. "He said he's cashing it early, but that doesn't make sense. There's no cash value in a term life policy. He's lying, or he doesn't understand his own policy. Either way, this is it. If he leaves the country with Bobby, we lose our window. It has to happen before he leaves." "What about Norman?" "I'll call him tonight. We need to move this up." Christopher allowed himself a cold smile. They were taking the bait. The next morning, Bobby was awake and alert, a change Christopher had been waiting for. He dismissed the nurse and closed the door to Bobby's room. "Dad." Bobby's voice was stronger now. "Are you okay?" Christopher sat on the edge of the bed and took his son's hand. "Bobby, I need to ask you some hard questions. Can you do that for me?" Bobby nodded, suddenly looking older than his 8 years. "The recordings you made. How did you know to do that?" Bobby's eyes filled with tears. "I heard them talking one night. I came downstairs to get water, and I heard Mom and Uncle Lance in the kitchen. They were saying bad things about you, about making you go away." "When was this?" "Maybe 2 months ago. I was scared, but I didn't know what to do. So I remembered you telling me once that if something bad happens, I should document everything. You said that when you were explaining your job." Christopher's chest tightened. His own advice, meant for corporate security, had saved both their lives. "So I started recording them whenever I could. I leave the old phone you gave me, the one you said I could play games on, in places where they talked. The kitchen, the living room." Bobby wiped his eyes. "Then I started feeling sick, and I got scared that maybe they did something to me. That's when I moved the phone to the backpack and wrote you the note." "What note?" "In the backpack. The zippered pocket. There's a note." Christopher checked the pocket again and found a folded piece of paper he'd missed before. In Bobby's careful handwriting. "Dad, if something happens to me, Mom and Uncle Lance did it. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. I was scared. I love you. Bobby." Christopher pulled his son into a careful embrace, mindful of the 4 lines. "You did exactly right, buddy. You were so brave. And I need you to be brave a little bit longer, okay? Are you going to stop them?" "Yes. But Bobby, I need you to keep pretending you're still very sick. Can you do that when Mom's here?" Bobby nodded fiercely. "I don't want to see her anyway." "I know, son. I know. But this is important. The doctors are going to tell her you're getting worse. And I'm going to pretend I'm taking you away for treatment. When I do that, Uncle Lance and Mom are going to try to do something bad. But I'm going to catch them. Do you understand? Like a trap." "Exactly like a trap." Bobby managed a small smile. "Like the ones you used to set in Afghanistan?" "Smarter," Christopher promised. "Much smarter." That evening, Christopher called a family meeting at the house. Just him, Leah, and Lance, who had been conveniently supporting them through Bobby's illness. Christopher poured whiskey for 3, his hands trembling just enough to seem genuine. I wanted you both here. Lance, you're Bobby's godfather and my oldest friend. Leah, you're my wife. I need you to know what I'm planning. They listened as he outlined his fictional plan. Take Bobby to a clinic in Tijuana in 2 days, cash out everything, throw a Hail Mary at experimental treatment. He'd be gone for at least a month, maybe more. What about the business? Lance asked. Ricardo's taking over. I don't care anymore. I just want my son to live. Leah reached for his hand. Christopher let her take it, even as his skin crawled. Christopher, you're not thinking clearly. Maybe we should. It's done, Leah. I've made my decision. He pulled his hand away and drained his whiskey. I'm going to bed. I need to start packing tomorrow. He left them in the living room, but Herman was already listening from the van parked 2 houses down, monitoring the bugs they'd placed throughout the house. 10 minutes after Christopher went upstairs, Lance and Leah's conversation confirmed everything. This is perfect, Lance said. Better than we planned. He's isolated, desperate, making rash decisions. No one will question it. Question what? An accident. On the way to the airport. A car crash. Tragic. Man loses control, trying to save his dying son. Both killed instantly. Both. Leah's voice wavered. Lance, Bobby's just He knows too much, Leah. You said it yourself. He's been acting strange around you. Kids talk. We can't risk it. Silence. Then, when? Tomorrow night. Norman's crew will handle it. Professional. Clean. You'll be the grieving widow, and in 6 months, we'll quietly get together. A comfort to each other in dark times. And the money? All yours. Well, ours. 5 million life insurance, plus the business, the house. We'll sell it all and start fresh somewhere warm. Christopher listened to the recording Herman sent him, his jaw so tight it ached. They were planning to murder Bobby. His sick, dying son, except Bobby wasn't dying anymore, and they didn't know it. Tomorrow night, Christopher thought. Tomorrow night, they'd make their move. And he'd be ready. Chapter 4, Moving Pieces. Christopher spent the next day in constant motion, a man possessed. To anyone watching, and Lance was definitely watching, he looked like a desperate father making impossible preparations. Loading the car with luggage, arguing on the phone with insurance companies, snapping at colleagues. But every move was calculated. Eric's arranged for a medical transport to take Bobby from the hospital tonight at 8. Christopher told Herman over their encrypted channel. That's when they'll make their move, somewhere between the hospital and the airport. We've identified 3 likely spots, Herman replied. All on the route to Philadelphia International. Narrow roads, limited witnesses. I got officers positioned at each location, plain clothes. But Chris, you're sure about this? They want an accident? They'll get one. Just not the one they're planning. Christopher had learned patience in intelligence work. The best operations weren't rushed. They unfolded naturally, letting the enemy commit fully before springing the trap. Lance and Leah thought they were hunters. They were about to learn they'd been prey all along. At the hospital, Christopher made a show of signing discharge papers, his hand shaking just enough. Bobby was in on the plan now, playing his part. When Leah arrived to say goodbye, Bobby turned away from her. Bobby, honey, Daddy's taking you to get better, Leah cooed, reaching for her son. Don't touch me, Bobby whispered, just loud enough for the nurse to hear. Leah pulled back, eyes wide. Sweetheart, you're confused. The medicine. He's been having episodes, Christopher interjected quickly, putting himself between them. The doctors said the toxins in his system, he emphasized the word, watching Leah's face carefully, have been affecting his cognition. A flash of something crossed Leah's expression. Fear? Guilt? It vanished as quickly as it appeared. I should come with you, Leah tried. To Mexico. You'll need help. No. Christopher's tone was firm. You need to stay here, handle things with the business. Ricardo needs support transitioning. And honestly, Leah, I need to do this alone. With my son. She couldn't argue without seeming suspicious. Call me when you land? Of course. He kissed her cheek, the gesture mechanical. We'll get through this. But even as he said it, Christopher was thinking of recording 32, where Leah had laughed, about how Christopher still thinks we're happy. The medical transport arrived at 8 precisely. Eric supervised the transfer, playing the role of concerned specialist. Bobby was loaded into the ambulance. Christopher climbed in beside him, and they pulled away from St. Michael's. Lance's car, the dark blue sedan, picked them up 2 blocks later. He was trying to be subtle, staying 3 cars back. He didn't notice Herman's unmarked police car behind him, or the 2 other units paralleling them on adjacent streets. "Talk to me, Herman," Christopher said into his earpiece. "Got him. He's on his phone. We're intercepting the call now." Through his earpiece, Christopher heard Lance's voice. "They're moving. En route to airport. ETA, 30 minutes. Norman Chandler's gravelly response. "We're in position at the Route 291 overpass." "You sure about this, Patterson? Killing a kid's heavy business. Just do your job. You're getting paid enough. Your conscience, man. I'll handle the mechanical failure." Car goes off the road, hits the barrier, boom. Tragic accident. Christopher's hands clenched. They weren't even conflicted about murdering an 8-year-old. "Change of plans," Christopher said calmly to the transport driver, actually an undercover officer. "Take the exit to Route 291. That's where they're waiting, sir." "I know. That's the point." The ambulance turned onto Route 291. Ahead, Christopher could see the overpass, shadows gathering beneath it. This was it. "Eric, activate Bobby's monitor alarms." In the back of the ambulance, Eric triggered the medical monitors to flatline. The shrill alarm filled the cabin. "Bobby's crashing," Eric shouted, loud enough for any directional microphones to pick up. "Driver, pull over. Now!" The ambulance swerved to the shoulder, right at the base of the overpass. Christopher jumped out, running to the back doors, playing the panicked father. "Bobby, no, no, no." From the shadows, Christopher saw movement. Norman Chandler and 2 others approaching the ambulance. They wore maintenance uniforms, carrying tools. To any passerby, they'd look like highway workers. But Christopher saw the device in Norman's hand. Remote trigger, probably for an explosive device they'd planted on the ambulance's fuel line at the hospital. Simple, effective. Ambulance pulls over, mysterious explosion. No survivors. "Now," Christopher said quietly. Lights flooded the overpass from every direction. Herman's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Philadelphia police. Drop your weapons and get on the ground." Norman froze, confusion crossing his face. His 2 associates bolted, but officers tackled them within seconds. Norman reached for the trigger device. Christopher was faster. 12 years of combat training kicked in. He closed the distance in 3 strides, his hand shooting out to grip Norman's wrist, twisting until the device fell. A swift kick to Norman's knee brought him down, and Christopher had him pinned before the man could react. "You're done," Christopher hissed in his ear. Officers swarmed in, securing Norman. Herman approached, snapping handcuffs on the struggling man. "Norman Chandler, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted vehicular homicide." Herman caught Christopher's eye. "We got him. What about Lance?" As if on cue, Christopher's earpiece crackled. "Suspect 2 apprehended. Lance Patterson in custody." Herman pulled Christopher aside as other officers processed the scene. "We got everything. Norman's device, the remote trigger, and they were stupid enough to keep their phones on. We recorded their whole conversation, including Lance's instructions and the money transfers. And Leah, that's trickier. She's not physically here. We can place her in the conspiracy through the recordings Bobby made, but a good lawyer might argue. She won't have a good lawyer," Christopher said coldly, "because she's about to make a critical mistake." He pulled out his phone and called Leah. She answered on the first ring. "Christopher, is Bobby okay? I heard the ambulance had to pull over." "He's gone, Leah." Christopher let his voice break convincingly. "Bobby's gone. He coded in the ambulance, and we couldn't bring him back." Silence. Then, no, that's not. "Christopher, where are you?" "Route 291. Under the overpass. The police are here." There was an explosion. The ambulance, he choked on the words. "Come here, Leah. Please. I need you. I'm coming. I'm coming right now." She hung up. Christopher handed the phone to Herman. "She'll call Lance. Herman said with certainty. And he won't answer because he's in handcuffs. That'll panic her. She'll either run or come here to see what happened. Either way, she incriminates herself. They waited. 10 minutes later, Christopher's phone buzzed with a text from Leah. Lance isn't answering. What's going on? I don't know. Christopher typed back. Please hurry. I'm falling apart. 15 minutes later, Leah's car pulled up to the scene. She stepped out, looking appropriately horrified at the police presence, the damaged ambulance. Then she saw Christopher standing there, very much alive, and Bobby sitting in the back of an actual ambulance now, very much alive, waving at her. The color drained from her face. Leah Blake. Herman stepped forward with handcuffs ready. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment. I didn't. Leah looked wildly between Christopher and Bobby. Bobby's alive? But you said. I lied. Christopher said flatly. Just like you've been lying for 18 months. Christopher, I don't know what you think, but... Herman cut her off. We have 47 recordings, made by your son, documenting your affair with Lance Patterson and your plans to murder your husband. We have evidence you poisoned Bobby with thallium. We have Lance Patterson and Norman Chandler in custody, and they're already talking. You want to add lying to a police officer to your charges. Leah's knees buckled. An officer caught her before she fell. What? Christopher asked, the question he'd been holding back. Why Bobby? He's your son. Leah looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw the real her. The mask was gone. He found out. He was going to tell you. Lance said we couldn't risk it. So you poisoned your own child. I didn't. Lance did it. I just didn't stop him. As if that somehow made it better. Christopher turned away before he did something he'd regret. Bobby was watching from the ambulance, Eric's arm around his shoulders protectively. Look her, Christopher told Herman. I need to take my son home. Chapter 5. Unraveling Threads. The interrogation rooms at Philadelphia Police Headquarters were designed to be uncomfortable. Christopher watched through one-way glass as Herman and his partner, Detective Alexis Murphy, worked on Lance Patterson. Lance had started confident, demanding a lawyer, claiming he didn't know what they were talking about. That lasted until Herman played the recordings. That's not admissible, Lance blustered. Recorded without consent by a minor. We don't need them for court, Detective Murphy said calmly. We have Norman Chandler. Know what he said? He said you approached him about handling a problem. He kept receipts, Lance. Every conversation, every payment. He's been in this business long enough to know to protect himself. Norman's a known criminal. His word means nothing. Herman leaned forward. Then how about the thallium we found in your apartment? Or the insurance documents we found in your car, showing Christopher's policy? Or the text between you and Leah, planning when and where to make you move? Lance's face went pale. I want my lawyer. Smart choice, Herman said, because the DA's about to offer Norman a deal for his testimony. And guess what? In conspiracy cases, everybody's equally guilty. You're looking at attempted murder times 2, plus conspiracy to commit murder, plus poisoning a minor. That's life without parole, minimum. In another interrogation room, Leah wasn't faring better. Detective Ricardo Pope, Christopher had asked for his business partner to be given temporary consulting status, sat across from her with a file full of evidence. The thing about long-term affairs, Ricardo said conversationally, is they leave traces. Hotel receipts, phone records, witnesses. We've got you and Lance at the Marriott 14 times in 6 months. We've got you withdrawing cash, always in amounts just under $10,000 to avoid reporting. We've got you browsing websites about thallium poisoning symptoms. That was research, Leah said quickly. For a novel I was. Leah, stop. Ricardo's voice hardened. Your son almost died. Bobby made recordings because he was scared. He knew you were planning something horrible, and he tried to protect his father. An 8-year-old showed more courage than you've shown in your entire adult life. Tears ran down Leah's face. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be an affair. But Lance, he started talking about Christopher's money, about how we could be together if Christopher was just gone. And I wanted that so badly. I wanted to be free. So you poisoned your son? Lance said Bobby was going to ruin everything. He said Bobby was spying on us, that he'd tell Christopher. I didn't, she broke down. I just wanted Christopher to hurt like I'd been hurting. Why were you hurting? Ricardo asked. Christopher gave you everything. A home, security, love. Leah's face twisted. He gave me nothing. He was always working, always traveling. I was alone in that house, raising Bobby by myself, while Christopher played spy games for corporate clients. Lance paid attention to me. Lance made me feel alive. Ricardo closed the file. Lance is in the next room right now, blaming you for everything, saying it was your idea, that you manipulated him. That's a lie. Maybe. But here's the truth. You have one chance to help yourself. Full cooperation, complete testimony, and maybe the DA considers 25 to life instead of life without parole. Christopher watched Leah crumble and felt nothing. The woman he'd loved was gone, if she'd ever truly existed. In her place was someone he didn't recognize. Herman emerged from Lance's interrogation room and joined Christopher in the observation area. Patterson's singing. Gave up everything. How he got the thallium, how he dosed Bobby's food over 3 weeks, how he contacted Norman through an underground network. And get this wasn't his first time. Christopher's head snapped toward his brother. What? Lance was discharged from the army because he was suspected of poisoning a fellow soldier who'd reported him for drug theft. They couldn't prove it, so you helped get him a quiet discharge. But Chris, the symptoms were identical to Bobby's. I helped a man who tried to murder someone. Christopher's voice was hollow. You helped a friend, or who you thought was a friend. That's on Lance, not you. Christopher watched as Leah was led out of the interrogation room, handcuffed and broken. She didn't look at the one-way glass, didn't know he was watching. I need some air, Christopher said. Outside the station, the October evening was cool. Christopher leaned against the brick wall and closed his eyes. His phone buzzed, a text from Bobby, who was staying with Herman's family. Dad, Uncle Herman's kids are teaching me to play Mario Kart. I'm beating them. Are you okay? Christopher smiled despite everything. I'm okay, buddy. Be home soon. Did they arrest Mom and Uncle Lance? Yes. Good. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. More than anything. Trudy Gaines found him there 20 minutes later. Christopher, we need to talk about next steps. I'm listening. The DA's office wants to move quickly on this. They're offering Leah a deal. Testify against Lance, full cooperation, and they'll recommend 25 years instead of life. She'd be eligible for parole in 15. No. Christopher's voice was steel. Christopher, Trudy, she poisoned our son. She planned my murder. She would have let Bobby die to cover her tracks. No deals. If she doesn't take the deal, she'll fight. This could drag out for years. Bobby would have to testify, relive all of this. Christopher was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if Bobby doesn't have to testify? What if we have all the evidence we need without putting him through that? The recordings help, but the defense will attack them. They'll say Bobby was coached, that the recordings were manufactured. We need Bobby's testimony to authenticate them. Then we need Lance to flip completely. Make him the star witness against Leah. Why would he do that? Christopher's smile was cold. Because I'm going to give him a very compelling reason. Chapter 6, The Final Witness. Christopher sat across from Lance Patterson in a private meeting room at the Philadelphia Detention Center. No lawyers, no police, just 2 men who'd once been brothers in arms. Lance looked haggard, the cocky confidence gone. You shouldn't be here, Chris. Probably not. But I wanted to look you in the eye and ask you something. I'm not talking without my lawyer. I don't need you to talk. I need you to listen. Christopher pulled out a folder. This is evidence the DA hasn't shared with you yet. Want to know what it is? Lance stayed silent, but his eyes flicked to the folder. It's medical records, Christopher continued, from her time in the Army. Specifically, from when Private First Class Curtis Klein died under mysterious circumstances. The same Curtis Klein who reported you for stealing prescription painkillers from the medical unit. Lance's jaw tightened. The Army suspected you poisoned him, but they couldn't prove it. So I helped get you discharged quietly, thinking I was protecting a friend with PTSD. But I wasn't protecting a friend. I was protecting a murderer. Christopher slid the folder across the table. I hired investigators. Really good ones. They found things the Army missed. Receipts for heavy metals purchased under fake names. Witness statement from soldiers who saw you near Curtis's food. Medical evidence that his symptoms matched thallium poisoning. That's all speculation. Meaningless. Maybe. But here's what isn't speculation. This evidence goes to Curtis Klein's family. They file a civil suit against you. The publicity alone destroys any chance you have at trial. The jury will hear about how you've done this before. First Curtis, then Bobby. Pattern of behavior. And Lance? Curtis Klein's father is a retired Marine general with connections. Your life in prison won't be pleasant. Lance's face had gone white. Or, Christopher said softly, you make this right. Not for me. Not for you. For Bobby. You testify against Leah. Full cooperation. You take full responsibility for everything. The poisoning, the murder plot, all of it. You say Leah tried to stop you, that she didn't know what you were doing until it was too late. You want me to lie? I want you to save an 8-year-old boy from having to testify against his mother in open court. I want Bobby to have a chance at a normal life, not years of trauma therapy, because he had to describe how his mother poisoned him. Lance was quiet for a long moment. If I do this, what do I get? The DA might offer you a deal. 20 years instead of life. Parole in 15. And I don't send the Curtis Klein evidence to anyone. And if I don't, Christopher stood. Then you spend the rest of your life in prison as a child poisoner. Inmates have a special place for people who hurt kids. Lance, you were a medic. You know what they'll do to you. This is blackmail. This is justice. You wanted to destroy my family for money. I'm offering you a way to do one decent thing before you disappear forever. Christopher walked to the door, then paused. We were brothers once. But you crossed a line I can't forgive. This is the only mercy you're getting from me. 3 days later, Lance Patterson took the DA's deal. He confessed to everything. Obtaining the thallium, poisoning Bobby over 3 weeks, planning Christopher's murder with Norman Chandler. He testified that Leah had initially been unaware of the poisoning, that she'd only learned about it after Bobby got sick, but by then she was in too deep. It was a lie, but it was a lie that served a purpose. Leah, faced with Lance's testimony and the mountain of evidence against her, took her own deal. 15 years for conspiracy after the fact and obstruction of justice. She'd serve at least 10. The trial for Norman Chandler was swift. With Lance and Leah both testifying against him, he had no defense. Life without parole for attempted murder. Christopher watched the proceedings from the back of the courtroom, Bobby beside him. His son had grown quieter over the weeks, more serious. The innocence that should have defined his childhood had been stolen. When Leah was led into court in her orange jumpsuit, Bobby reached for Christopher's hand. Dad, do I have to see her? No, son. We can leave. I want to see her face when she hears the sentence. So they stayed. And when the judge pronounced 15 years, Leah turned to look at the gallery. Her eyes found Bobby. Bobby stared back, his expression unreadable for an 8-year-old. Then he leaned into Christopher and whispered, Can we go home now? Yeah, buddy. We can go home. Chapter 7, Rebuilding. 6 months after the trial, Christopher stood in the doorway of Bobby's bedroom, watching his son sleep. The nightmares had become less frequent, down from every night to maybe twice a week. Dr. Sharon Dickinson, the child psychologist they'd been seeing, said Bobby was resilient but would carry these scars forever. Christopher knew about scars. He had his own collection. The house felt different now. Christopher had considered moving, starting fresh somewhere new, but Bobby had resisted. This is my home, Dad. I'm not letting them take it from me. At 9 years old now, birthdays celebrated with a small party of Herman's kids and a few careful school friends, Bobby was finding his footing. Little League baseball helped. So did the German Shepherd puppy Christopher had brought home, a trained protection dog named Rex who followed Bobby everywhere. Christopher's business had suffered during the trial. Clients didn't like publicity, especially the kind that involved attempted murder. But Ricardo had held things together, and slowly they were rebuilding. The bigger changes were internal. Christopher worked from home 3 days a week now. Mornings were for Bobby, making breakfast together, helping with homework, just being present. The international contracts he'd once pursued aggressively stayed local now. No more weeks away. No more just one more trip. Herman visited every Sunday for dinner, often bringing his family. His wife, Phyllis, had become a surrogate mother figure for Bobby, filling a void with quiet competence. Bobby never asked about Leah. Not once. The recordings, those 47 files that had saved their lives, were locked in a safe deposit box, backed up in 3 encrypted locations. Evidence for the trial? Yes, but also a reminder of Bobby's courage. He's a tough kid, Eric Guerra said during a follow-up visit. The toxicologist had become a family friend, stopping by monthly to check Bobby's blood work. No permanent damage. His kidneys are functioning normally, liver enzymes perfect. Physically, he's completely recovered. And mentally, Eric's expression grew serious. That's not my expertise, but Dr. Dickinson would tell you that Bobby's been through trauma that would break many adults. The fact that he's functioning this well is testament to 2 things: his own strength and you. Christopher had his doubts about that. Some nights, lying awake at 3 in the morning, he wondered if he could have seen the signs earlier. Should have known his wife was unhappy. Should have recognized Lance's predatory nature. But Dr. Dickinson, in the sessions Christopher attended for himself, was firm. You can't prevent someone else's evil, Christopher. You can only respond to it. And you responded by protecting your son and ensuring justice was served. That's what matters. Justice. An interesting word. Lance Patterson sat in state prison, serving 20 years. With good behavior, he'd be out in 14. Norman Chandler would die behind bars. And Leah sent letters. Christopher burned them without reading. Bobby knew she wrote. Christopher was honest about that, but Bobby had made his choice. I don't have a mom anymore, he'd said simply. She tried to kill me. You don't come back from that. Child psychology experts might argue about the long-term impacts of Bobby's decision, but Christopher supported it. Leah had lost her right to Bobby's love when she'd put poison in his food. The divorce had been finalized quickly. With Leah's criminal conviction, Christopher got everything. Full custody, the house, the assets. He'd put half of it in a trust for Bobby, managed by Trudy Gaines. The other half funded Bobby's therapy, their new life, and a quiet charitable foundation Christopher started, supporting children who'd been victims of parental abuse. Some good from all this evil. Dad! Bobby's voice startled him. His son was awake, sitting up in bed. Why are you standing in the doorway like a creeper? Christopher laughed, the sound still feeling strange after months of grief and anger. Just checking on you. I'm fine, but I'm also 9, not 5. You don't have to check every night. Humor me. Bobby rolled his eyes but smiled. Can Rex sleep in here tonight? Sure. Christopher whistled, and the German shepherd bounded up the stairs, immediately jumping on Bobby's bed and settling against him. Dad! Bobby's voice grew quieter. Do you think Mom ever loved me? Like, really? The question Christopher had been dreading. He sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. I think your mom is a complicated person who made terrible choices. But yeah, buddy, I think she loved you in her own way. She was just too broken to show it properly. But love means you don't hurt people, right? You taught me that. Real love, yes. Real love means protecting people, sacrificing for them. Your mom got lost somewhere along the way. Bobby was quiet for a moment, petting Rex. I'm glad I have you. Christopher's throat tightened. I'm glad I have you too, son. You saved both our lives with those recordings. You know that, right? I was really scared. I thought maybe I was wrong, that maybe I was making it up or something. You weren't wrong. You were brave and smart. You're my hero, Bobby. Bobby's face reddened. Dad, that's embarrassing. Too bad. It's true. Christopher stood. Get some sleep. Baseball practice tomorrow. Can we get ice cream after? Like you have to ask. Christopher closed the door softly and headed downstairs. His laptop sat on the kitchen table, emails waiting. Ricardo had sent the contracts for a new client, a pharmaceutical company needing security assessment. Standard work, good money, and entirely local. His phone buzzed. A text from Herman. Beer tomorrow night? Phillies are playing. Christopher smiled and typed back, can't. Taking Bobby to the batting cages. Rain check for next week? You're becoming predictable, little brother. Good. Predictable sounds perfect. Christopher closed the laptop and looked around the kitchen. This room, where Leah and Lance had plotted their betrayal. He considered remodeling, changing everything, but Bobby had asked him not to. If we change it, they win, Bobby had said. They don't get to take our house from us. 9 years old and already wiser than most adults. Christopher poured himself a whiskey, one drink, his new limit, and stepped onto the back porch. The October air was cool, stars visible above the suburban sprawl. He thought about the man he'd been 18 months ago, successful, confident, thinking he had life figured out. That man had been naive. This man, the one he was now, knew that safety was an illusion, that evil could wear a familiar face, that the people you trusted most could destroy you. But he also knew that love, real love, the kind between father and son, could survive anything. That courage came in small packages. That sometimes the right path meant getting your hands dirty, bending rules, doing whatever necessary to protect what mattered. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call from an unknown number. Christopher almost ignored it, then remembered it might be case-related. Blake speaking. Christopher Blake? An unfamiliar male voice, southern accent. My name is Martin Case. I'm calling from Louisiana. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Lance Patterson. Christopher's hand tightened on the phone. I have nothing to say about Lance. I understand, but I'm Curtis Klein's brother, and I just learned what really happened to Curtis. What Lance did. Christopher closed his eyes. The file he'd shown Lance, the evidence he'd gathered, he'd thought it would stay buried, leverage that lived and died in that prison meeting room. Mr. Case, I'm not calling for revenge, Mr. Blake. I'm calling to say thank you. Curtis's death destroyed our family. We never had answers. My parents died not knowing why their son was murdered. But now I know, and I know that because of you, Lance Patterson will never hurt another person. So thank you. I didn't do anything. You protected your son. That's everything. And in doing so, you gave my family closure. Martin Case paused. I just wanted you to know that Curtis is at peace now. And so are we. The call ended. Christopher stared at the phone, then up at the stars. Sometimes justice worked in strange ways. Chapter 8. The Visitor. Spring came to Philadelphia with gentle rain and cherry blossoms. Bobby finished 4th grade with good grades and better friendships. Dr. Dickinson reduced their sessions to once a month. Rex grew from a puppy into a massive, protective shadow. Life found a rhythm. Christopher hadn't expected Trudy Gaines's call. Christopher, I need to inform you about something. Leah's requested a meeting with Bobby. Supervised, of course, at the prison. It's her right under the custody agreement to request contact. Absolutely not. I know, but legally, she can petition the court. She's his mother, and she hasn't been convicted of directly harming him. Lance took the blame for the poisoning. A judge might grant supervised visitation. Christopher felt the familiar rage bubble up. Trudy, that woman tried to murder him. I know. But the legal system doesn't always align with justice. I can fight this, and I will. But I need to prepare you. There's a chance the court might allow it. Christopher hung up and immediately called Herman. They're trying to give her access to Bobby. I heard. Ricardo called me. Chris, we'll handle this. There's precedent for denying parental rights based on endangerment. It's not enough. She's going to use this to hurt him again. That's all this is, another way to control, to manipulate. Then we show the court who she really is. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Christopher spent those weeks documenting everything. Bobby's nightmares, his panic attacks when asked about his mother, Dr. Dickinson's detailed reports on the trauma. But he also prepared for the worst. Bobby, Christopher said one evening, sitting with his son on the back porch, your mother has asked to see you. Bobby's face went blank, the expression he wore when processing something painful. Does she get to? Not if I can help it. But there's a court hearing. A judge will decide. What do I do if the judge says yes? Then I'll be with you every second. She won't be able to touch you or hurt you. But buddy, you have a voice in this too. If you tell the judge you don't want to see her, that matters. Will they make me talk to her? Not unless you want to. I promise you, Bobby, I will do everything in my power to protect you from her. Bobby nodded slowly. I don't want to see her, Dad. She scares me. Those words broke Christopher's heart and strengthened his resolve simultaneously. The hearing took place in family court, a smaller, less intimidating setting than the criminal trial had been. Leah appeared via video link from the prison, wearing civilian clothes they provided, hair brushed, makeup applied. She looked like the woman Christopher had married, almost. Her lawyer, a public defender named Felix Benjamin, argued passionately. My client made terrible mistakes, but she remains Bobby Blake's mother. The bond between parent and child is sacred. Ms. Blake has completed parenting classes in prison, undergone therapy, and genuinely wishes to repair her relationship with her son. Trudy countered with medical records, therapy transcripts, and a statement from Dr. Dickinson that Christopher had provided. Bobby Blake suffers from PTSD directly related to his mother's actions. Contact with her would be psychologically damaging and potentially traumatic. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margarita Jennings, listened carefully. Then she did something unexpected. She asked to speak with Bobby. Mr. Blake, is your son available? Christopher hadn't brought Bobby, thinking to spare him the experience. Not today, Your Honor. I didn't want to subject him to. I understand, but I need to hear from Bobby himself. This is his life we're deciding. Judge Jennings looked at the clock. We'll reconvene in 2 hours. Please bring your son to chambers. I'll speak with him privately. Christopher's stomach churned as he called Herman to pick up Bobby from school. This was it. Bobby would have to face this directly. 2 hours later, Bobby sat in Judge Jennings's chambers, Christopher beside him. The judge had dismissed all lawyers, making it just the three of them. Bobby, Judge Jennings said gently, I know this is hard, but I need to understand how you feel about seeing your mother. There's no wrong answer here. Bobby looked at Christopher, who nodded encouragingly. Then Bobby turned to the judge. I don't want to see her. She tried to kill me. She put poison in my food. Your mother didn't do that, Bobby. Mr. Patterson did. She knew. I heard them talking about it in my recordings. She said I knew too much. Bobby's voice shook but stayed steady. And even if she didn't give me the poison herself, she didn't stop it. That's the same thing. Judge Jennings studied him. Are you afraid of your mother? Yes. Why? Bobby was quiet for a moment. Because she chose Lance over me. She chose money over me. And I don't think that's changed. I think she wants to see me so she can feel better about herself, not because she cares about me. My dad says real love is about putting someone else first. My mom has never done that. Christopher's chest tightened with pride and sorrow. Pride at his son's clarity, sorrow that he had to have it. Judge Jennings nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, Bobby. That took courage. The hearing reconvened an hour later. Judge Jennings delivered her ruling. Having spoken with Bobby Blake and reviewed all evidence presented, this court finds that contact between Bobby and his mother, Leah Blake, will be detrimental to the child's well-being. The petition for visitation is denied. Furthermore, this court orders that no further petitions for contact may be filed for a minimum of 5 years, at which point Bobby will be old enough to make his own informed decision. This case is closed. Leah, on the video screen, began crying. Her lawyer tried to object, but Judge Jennings was firm. Ms. Blake, you made choices that harmed your child. The consequences of those choices include losing access to him. I suggest you use your time in prison to truly reflect on what you've done, not to manipulate the legal system into giving you something you haven't earned. The screen went dark. Outside the courthouse, Bobby hugged Christopher tightly. Is it really over? For now, yes. Good. Bobby pulled back. Can we go see Uncle Herman? I want to tell him what I told the judge. Absolutely. As they walked to the car, Bobby took Christopher's hand, something he'd been doing less as he got older and more independent. Dad, I meant what I said in there. About real love. You taught me that. You've always known it, Bobby. You just needed the words. Will I ever forgive her? It was the first time Bobby had asked that question. Christopher considered his answer carefully. Maybe. Forgiveness is complicated. But forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let someone back into your life. You can forgive and still protect yourself. Have you forgiven her? I'm working on it. For my sake, not hers. Carrying anger around is heavy, buddy. Bobby nodded, processing this. I'll think about it. When I'm older, that's all anyone can ask. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 2 years after the trial, Christopher Blake stood in his backyard watching Bobby play baseball with Herman's son, Corey. At 11, Bobby was tall for his age, athletic, with the easy confidence of a kid who'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. The scars were still there. Bobby still slept with Rex, still had occasional nightmares, still saw Dr. Dickinson monthly. But he was thriving in ways Christopher had once feared impossible. Christopher's business had not just recovered but expanded. Clients appreciated his new approach, thorough, methodical, with an emphasis on protecting people over profits. Ricardo had become a full partner. They'd hired Martin Case's sister, Julie Harper, as their chief of operations. The Louisiana connection had turned into friendship, then professional collaboration. "Your son's got a hell of an arm," Ricardo said, joining Christopher with 2 beers. "He gets it from Herman's side. Definitely not from me." They watched in comfortable silence. Christopher had rebuilt his life one deliberate piece at a time, choosing each element carefully. No more taking things for granted. No more assuming safety. "I heard from Lance's lawyer," Ricardo said quietly. "He's up for parole review next year." Christopher's jaw tightened. 10 years. He served 10 years for trying to murder my son. "I know, but with his cooperation during the trial, he doesn't get out. I'll make sure of it." Ricardo nodded. "I figured. I already drafted a victim impact statement for you to submit." "And Leah?" 5 more years minimum. She's been a model prisoner, apparently. Taking classes, working in the library. Her lawyer will probably petition for early release. Christopher had prepared for this. "When that happens, Bobby and I will submit our own statements. She doesn't get out early for good behavior. She gets out when she served her time, and not a day sooner." "Fair enough." Ricardo paused. "You ever wonder what would have happened if Bobby hadn't made those recordings?" Christopher had wondered. Many times. "I'd be dead, and Bobby might be too. Or we'd never have known the truth, and they'd have tried again until they succeeded." Pretty heavy burden for an 8-year-old to carry. Bobby doesn't see it as a burden. He sees it as saving our lives. Dr. Dickinson says that perspective, that he took action, that he was powerful in his own story, is actually healing for him. Bobby hit a line drive that Corey barely caught. Both kids laughed, the sound bright and unshadowed. Christopher watched his son, happy, healthy, whole, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. His phone buzzed. A text from Trudy Gaines. "Foundation paperwork finalized. Bobby's Courage Fund is officially active. First grants going out next month." The charitable foundation had been Bobby's idea. "Other kids should know they can be brave too, Dad, and they should have help." Bobby's Courage Fund supported children who'd been victims of parental abuse, providing therapy, legal assistance, and safe housing when needed. Funded by Christopher's business success and some quiet donations from people who'd followed the trial, it had already helped 15 families in 2 years. "Making a difference," Ricardo observed, reading over Christopher's shoulder. "Bobby's making a difference. I'm just the accountant." Herman approached, carrying a platter of burgers. "Food's ready. And Chris, you got a delivery. FedEx dropped it on your porch." Christopher excused himself and walked to the front of the house. A package sat on the porch steps, no return address. His security instincts kicked in. He scanned the package carefully before picking it up. Light, small, properly addressed. Inside was a book, The Power of Forgiveness, by an author Christopher didn't recognize. A note was tucked inside. Asterisk Christopher Blake. "You don't know me, but I was in the courtroom during Lance Patterson's sentencing. I'm a psychologist who specializes in trauma recovery. I've been following your story and your son's remarkable courage. This book helped me after my own betrayal. I thought it might help you too. Not to forgive those who hurt you. That's your choice alone, but to free yourself from the weight of what they did. Your son is lucky to have you. The world is better because you chose justice over revenge. A friend asterisk." Christopher stared at the note. Justice over revenge. But wasn't his justice a form of revenge? He'd manipulated Lance into taking blame to protect Bobby. He'd ensured Leah and Lance received maximum sentences. He'd used his skills and connections to destroy them both. And yet, he'd done it within the law. Mostly, he'd protected Bobby. He'd ensured neither of them could hurt anyone else. Was that justice or revenge? "Dad," Bobby called from the backyard. "Uncle Herman says the burgers are getting cold. Christopher pocketed the note and the book. Questions for another day, perhaps. Or questions that didn't need answers. He'd made his choices. He lived with them. That evening, after everyone had left, Christopher and Bobby sat on the back porch watching fireflies. Rex dozed at Bobby's feet, occasionally twitching in doggy dreams. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Bobby's tone was serious. "Always. Do you think about Mom?" Christopher chose honesty. "Sometimes. I think about who I thought she was. I grieve that person, even though she probably never existed. Dr. Dickinson says it's okay to miss someone and also be glad they're gone. But it's complicated. Dr. Dickinson's smart." Bobby was quiet for a moment. "I don't miss her. Is that bad?" "No, buddy. You feel what you feel. There's no right or wrong. But sometimes I feel guilty for not missing her. Like, she's my mom. Aren't you supposed to love your mom?" Christopher pulled Bobby close. "You're supposed to love people who love you back properly. People who protect you and put your needs first. Your mother failed at that. You don't owe her your love just because of biology. But I still feel guilty." "I know. That's normal. It means you have a good heart. But Bobby, listen to me. You saved both our lives. You were brave when being brave could have gotten you hurt. You documented evidence, and you trusted me to fix things. That's extraordinary. You don't owe your mother anything except to live a good life in spite of what she did." Bobby leaned against Christopher's shoulder. "I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my son." They sat in silence, watching the fireflies dance. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew. Philadelphia hummed around them, alive and indifferent to their small moment of peace. Christopher thought about the past 2 years, the fear, the rage, the careful planning, the courtroom battles. He thought about Leah in prison, Lance locked away, Norman Chandler dying behind bars. He thought about Bobby's recordings, the voice of a frightened child who'd been brave enough to act. He thought about justice and revenge, about forgiveness and healing, about the man he'd been and the man he'd become. And mostly, he thought about the boy beside him, who'd survived poison and betrayal and still found a way to laugh, to play baseball, to dream about the future. "Bobby." "Yeah, Dad. You know I'm proud of you, right?" "Every single day." Bobby smiled up at him. "I know. And Dad." "Yes. You're pretty badass too. You know that, right?" Christopher laughed, the sound coming easier now, more natural. "Where'd you learn that word?" "Uncle Herman." "Of course. Remind me to talk to him about age-appropriate vocabulary." "Dad, I'm 11. "Exactly. Too young for badass." But Christopher smiled as he said it, pulling his son closer. Because Bobby was right. Christopher Blake had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and had come out the other side. He'd protected his son, ensured justice, and built a new life from the ashes of the old one. Maybe that was badass. Or maybe it was just love. Real love. The kind that fought and protected and never gave up. The kind that survived. Rex stirred, lifting his head to scan the yard. Ever vigilant, always protecting. Christopher scratched the dog's ears. "Good boy. We're safe." And for the first time in 2 years, Christopher Blake believed it. They were safe. They were healing. They were against all odds going to be okay. The fireflies continued their dance, the night air warm and gentle. Inside the house, Christopher's phone buzzed with another work email, another contract, another piece of their rebuilt life. But that could wait. Right now, there was only this. A father and son on a back porch, a loyal dog at their feet, and a future that was finally, blessedly, their own. Justice had been served. Life continued. And sometimes that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.